Hello, it's Mark from HeroTech Systems, and in this video we'll be looking at how to configure Dhcp with Cisco Router in Cisco Packet Tracer. And this is lesson 5 of the Cisco Packet Tracer tutorial for beginners. And so if you have missed the previous 4 lessons, the link to those lessons are in the description below. So without further ado, let us go right into Cisco Packet Tracer software and then configure the Cisco Router for Dhcp. So if we open the Cisco Packet Tracer software, this is the interface. You're welcome to the interface. And I've got this nice little topology here which I used in the last lesson, which is connecting your devices to a Cisco switch. So if you have missed that lesson, the link, like I said before, is in the description, and then you can see how we configured or how we developed this topology. So we're just going to bring up our router. I always like to use the 2900 series router, so I'm going to bring it up, and then we'll configure it for DHCP. So yep, so we'll configure it for DHCP. I'm just going to bring this here. Sorry, put it this way. Alright, nice. So let's go into the devices IP configuration. So we can see that they still have the IP configuration for the static IPs which we configured earlier. So but now we'll be configuring the devices to get IP address automatically from using this Dhcp configuration here. Dhcp is the full name is Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and it is a protocol that is responsible for assigning IP addresses automatically to hosts on the network. So the administrator of the network doesn't have to go into the devices one after the other to assign IP addresses, which reduces in a great deal the administrative overhead that administrator faces. So just close this. Okay, I'll come down here to my router and I'm going to open it. So I go to the CLI. So I go to the CLI. And now we're going to start the configuration. So do you want to configure manually? No. So I'm going to go to my global configuration mode. Now in my global configuration mode, it is best practice that when you're configuring Dhcp, you exclude certain addresses. So because there are devices on the network that require that you give them a static IP. So for example, your servers, your printers on the network, you want to assign static IP addresses to those interfaces. Even your router gateway, for example, your router gateway should have a static IP address. You don't want the router gateway to always change, it will mess up with your network. So I'm going to first configure IP Dhcp exclusion to exclude a range of IP addresses. So this is the command IP Dhcp excluded. So IP Dhcp excluded address, and we're going to exclude a range of addresses. So 10.0.0.1. Remember, you are using the 10.0.0.0 subnet mask of 255.0.0.0 for this training. So that is using a classless interdomain routing value of /8. So so we're excluding 10.0.0.1 to 10.0.0.10. So if it works correctly, that means our IP address should start at 10.0.0.11 because this range 1 to 10 has been excluded from the pool. So now we're going to create the IP address pool. So IP Dhcp Pool. Let's see what it's going to ask us to do. Now it's asking for a pool name. You can see it says put in a word, and the word is what? The pool name. The pool name. So we're going to just call it our local LAN, that is local area network. So now we have to define the pool. To define the pool, we're going to use a network statement. So network, and remember I told you that for this lesson we're going to be using 10.0.0.0 with a subnet mask of 255.0.0.0, which is a CIDRO of /8. So I'm going to include the network address here, 10.0.0.0, 255, the mask. Let's see. So it's asking us for the network mask. So the network mask is 255.0.0.0. Good. Now it's asking, the next thing we're going to create is a default gateway or a default router. So the default gateway address is what the devices on the network will use as a passage to access the DHCP router. So it means that all devices on the network will have the default gateway address, because they're going to use it to access the router. So we're going to call it 10.0.0. Oh, sorry, I have to put in the command. So if you don't know, I told you before, always use if you don't know what command, if you get maybe a little bit confused with what to put in, just use the question mark command. So I can see that default router here is a command that I can still enter in this configuration, in this DHCP configuration mode. So always notice what is in this bracket. We can see that in this mode we are in the DHCP configuration mode. So I'm going to just put in the default router address, default router. If you don't want to type, you could just use the tab key to complete it. Okay, default router is 10.0.0.1. So you can see I am picking from the addresses that I've reserved, because this default router address has to be static. It cannot change. If it changes, your DHCP configuration is messed up. It will not work. So yes, so another thing I can configure is the DNS server. So if you want to access a DNS server on the network, you can put in a public DNS server IP address, or if you have a DNS server hosted on your local network, you can also include that address. So I'm going to just put in the address of a public DNS server, 8.8.8.8. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that we can configure here. So I'm going to exit the configuration and go back to the global configuration mode. Now let me go back to the privilege mode and then just save this configuration with the W arrow. So save the configuration. Now what's the next thing I need to do? The next thing I need to do is to connect the router to the switch. So I'm just going to connect the router to the switch. So I'm going to be using the copper straight through cable, and I'm going to connect. My router has 3 interfaces. I have the gigabit 0/0, 0/1, and the 0/2 interface. So I'll connect to the 0/0 interface, and I can connect to any port on my switch. Doesn't really matter. So you can see that the Ethernet 0/0 interface is showing the red triangle, meaning that the interface is shut down. So we need to bring it up. Now, to bring it up, I have to go into my router, go back to the global configuration mode, and then enter into the interface. So the command to enter the interface is interface. So you can see gigabit Ethernet. Remember, the interface is a gigabit Ethernet. So gigabit Ethernet, it is the okay, let's see, it says interface number. Remember, it's 0/0, so you put a 0, and then let's see what else. It's asking for a slash, so you put in the slash, and then put in the question mark again, and it's asking for interface number again, which is 0/0. So enter. So that's how you can use the question mark to find commands if you get confused. So I'm going to enter an IP address. Remember the default router which we set, because this is the address that the devices will use to connect to the router. So I'm going to give it the IP address which I set before. So IP address 10.0.0.1. So this is one of the addresses I reserved in the pool of reserved addresses or excluded addresses. So the mask is 255.0.0.0. So if you do not understand subnetting, you do not understand IP addressing, there's a guide which I prepared, a summarized guide which explains IP addressing in great detail. The link to that guide is in the description below. So I'm going to enter, and then now I am going to bring up the interface with the no shut command. So no shut or no shutdown in full. So you can see it says interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0, change state to up. Change state to up. So that's how to do that. So if we go back now, we can see, yes, so we can see our interface here. Now, to run some troubleshooting commands, if you want to run some troubleshooting commands, you want to view what you have done. So what we can do is to use the show command from the privilege mode. So show, let's look at the interface gig 0/0. So this is the short form of writing interface 0/0. So let's see what it says here. So gigabit Ethernet 0/0 is up, line protocol is up and connected. So you can see internet address. This is the IP address 10.1. You can see our duplex, the speed, and the media type. So these are, when you're troubleshooting, these are the kind of commands that you want to enter and then view. So it's up and running now. It's up and running now. We've configured the gateway. Sorry. So now let's test and see if we're going to get an IP address dynamically. So good, very good. You can see that we are getting the IP address. You can see it has gotten the IP address of 10.0.0.11. So if I close this one, if I come here, do this same thing, 10.0.0.12. You can see our DNS server. You can see our gateway. So it's assigning the default gateway of 10.0.0.1. Okay, so we'll come to our server here. Come to Dhcp configuration. Good. That's assigned it an IP address of 10.0.0.13. So let's come to our printer. Come to the configuration tab. Assign a gateway. So it assigns it a gateway here, and then click on the interface. It has assigned it also an IP address of 10.0.0.14. So if we come back and do a ping test, so let's ping 10.0.0.12. So ping 10.0.0.12. Okay, we can see that we are getting replies on our device. So if we ping, let's do a continuous ping. So a continuous ping. On, I think the printer was given 14. So we can see we have a reply from our printer. So that is how to configure Dhcp on a Cisco packet tracer using a Cisco router. If you found this video very helpful, please do not forget to like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so that whenever we upload a new content, you would be notified. Please, like I said before, if you are new to networking, you want to learn networking technologies from ground level up, from a top-down approach using a summarized guide, I have a link to what's a material that is essential for you. The link to that material is in the description below. Thank you for watching.